At 6:17 in the morning, he woke up before his alarm. Not because he had somewhere to be, because he didn't. There were no bills due today, no boss waiting for an explanation, no debt collector calling, no urgent email demanding his attention. And somewhere between midnight and 6 a.m., his investments had made more money than he used to earn in an entire year. His net worth was $3.4 million. He stared at the number for a few seconds, then closed the app. His coffee machine clicked on. The house was silent. He picked up his phone. One notification, a weather alert. He opened his messages. Nothing. No good morning, no missed call, no one asking what he was doing today. He refreshed the screen anyway. Still nothing. And that's when the strangest thought crossed his mind. He had spent 20 years building a life where he would never need anybody. Now he was starting to wonder, what happens when you finally get everything you spent your life chasing and discover nobody is waiting for you on the other side? Because the money wasn't the problem anymore. The money had done exactly what he asked it to do. It had protected him. It had given him options. It had removed emergencies from his life. But somewhere along the way, it had also removed people. When he was 12, he learned what financial insecurity sounded like. It sounded like his mother whispering on the phone in the kitchen because she didn't want the children to hear. It sounded like his father coming home after another double shift and pretending he wasn't exhausted. It sounded like, "We'll figure it out." Except sometimes they didn't. Bills arrived, money disappeared, relatives helped, and every time somebody had to borrow money, he noticed something change. The room became quieter, his parents became smaller. Pride became something you couldn't afford. So he made himself a promise, not a childhood dream, a survival rule. One day, I won't need anybody. He didn't know then how powerful that sentence would become. He grew up, got a job, started investing. His first paycheck was divided before he spent a dollar. Rent, food, emergency fund, investments. Everything had a place. Every purchase was questioned. Every unnecessary expense was eliminated. When his friends went out, he sometimes stayed home. When someone offered to help, he said no. When someone wanted to get close, he checked the risk. And slowly, something happened that nobody noticed. His financial discipline became emotional discipline. He wasn't just controlling his money anymore. He was controlling everything that could hurt him. At first, it looked like success. $10,000 invested, then $50,000, then $100,000. He didn't celebrate. He reinvested. $500,000, same apartment, same car, same routine. Then $1 million, still nothing. No champagne, no photograph, no announcement. He simply looked at the number and thought, good, now I need to get to 2. That was how he handled almost everything in life. Every finish line became another starting point. And financially, it worked. His money compounded. His expenses stayed low. His income increased. His investments grew. But there was another kind of compounding happening quietly in the background. Every time a friend invited him somewhere, he said no. Every birthday he skipped became easier to skip. Every unanswered message made the next one less likely. People didn't stop caring about him overnight. They simply learned not to expect him. And that's the dangerous thing about isolation. It rarely announces itself. Nobody sends you a letter saying, "We're leaving your life now." People just stop asking. Until one morning, you look at your phone and realize there is nobody left to disappoint. 7 years after he last spoke to Daniel, his phone vibrated. One message, "I found something that belongs to you." He stared at the screen. Daniel, his college friend, the guy who used to sleep on the floor of his apartment because there wasn't enough room for another mattress. 7 years. He almost deleted the message. Then another notification appeared. A photograph. He opened it and froze. It was an old picture of the two of them sitting outside that cheap apartment. 2 paper plates, 2 cans of soda, a half-eaten pizza between them. They were laughing, not posing, not pretending, just laughing. He zoomed in. There was something strange about the picture. Neither of them looked successful. Neither had money. Neither knew what the next 5 years would look like. And yet, he recognized that face, his own, a version of himself he hadn't seen in years. He whispered, "I was happy then." Then the thought that hurt more, "and I was broke." Daniel asked him to meet the next morning. He almost chose an expensive restaurant, somewhere quiet, somewhere private, somewhere with reservations. Then he looked at the photograph again and remembered where they used to eat, the old diner. So he went there. Daniel was already sitting in the corner booth, older, a little heavier, different hair, same smile. They talked about nothing at first, the weather,
work, the city. Then Daniel ordered the same breakfast they used to order. Eggs, toast, coffee. $40 between them. When the check came, the protagonist reached for his wallet. Daniel put his hand over it. "You don't have to pay for everything anymore." He smiled. "Of course I do." Daniel shook his head. "No, you really don't." The words landed strangely, because suddenly he saw a pattern. Dinner? He paid. Favor? He repaid. Help? He refused. Someone cared about him? He kept his distance. He had spent years making sure nobody could ever say, "You owe me." He thought that was freedom. But sitting across from Daniel, he finally wondered, what if independence had slowly become isolation? Daniel started telling him about the 7 years they'd missed. He got married, had a daughter, started a business, lost it. His father got sick. His family nearly lost their house. There were good years, terrible years, birthdays, hospital rooms, school plays, arguments, reconciliations, ordinary Tuesday nights, a whole life, 7 years of it. The protagonist listened. He had missed all of it, not because he couldn't afford to be there, because he had always believed there would be more time. He knew exactly how much his portfolio had returned each year. He knew his average expense ratio. He knew how much money he needed to retire. But when Daniel mentioned his daughter's name, he realized he didn't know it. That night, he went home, opened his investment spreadsheet. The numbers appeared instantly. $3.4 million. He stared at them, then closed the laptop. For the first time in years, he opened his contacts. 83 names. He scrolled slowly. 1, 2, 3. He stopped. There were 83 people in his phone, but only 3 people he could imagine calling without a reason. And suddenly, the number in his investment account didn't feel like wealth. It felt like a measurement of everything he'd successfully protected and everything he'd accidentally left outside. The wealth had grown. His world hadn't. A day in the life of a quiet millionaire. 3 months later, the market surged. Not slowly, not gradually. The kind of morning investors screenshot and send to each other. His portfolio was up nearly $180,000. He stared at the number. $180,000. There was a time when that number would have changed his entire day. He would have opened the charts, checked the news, run the calculation, maybe even allowed himself 5 seconds of satisfaction before asking how much more it could become. But this time, nothing happened. No excitement, no relief, just silence. He looked away from the screen. Same chair, same apartment, same untouched dining table, same phone sitting beside his coffee. The number had changed. His life hadn't. And for the first time, he understood something that spreadsheets had never shown him. He had spent years measuring progress in numbers because numbers were safe. They could be counted, compared, optimized, controlled. But numbers had no memory. They didn't remember who laughed with you. They didn't remember who waited for you. They didn't remember who called when you were sick. They didn't remember the birthday you missed. They didn't know the name of the person sitting alone at the other end of the table. His portfolio could tell him he was $180,000 richer. It couldn't tell him whether his life was better. He closed the app, and then, almost without thinking, he opened his contacts. His thumb stopped on one name, Mom. He stared at it. He had spoken to her recently, of course he had, but their conversations had become strangely efficient. Did you pay the bill? How's your appointment? Weather looks bad tomorrow. How's the market? Everything important had slowly been replaced by everything practical. He pressed call. 1 ring. 2. 3. Then she answered. Hey. He smiled. Hey, Mom. A pause. You sound different. I'm tired. Another pause. Then she asked, Are you okay? He almost gave the automatic answer. I'm fine. But something stopped him. His throat tightened. I'm okay. She didn't respond. Then quietly, That's not what I asked. He looked down at the $180,000 gain still glowing on the screen, and suddenly he couldn't hide behind the numbers anymore. I'm not broke, he said. I'm not failing. I'm not in trouble. His voice cracked slightly. I just think I built a life nobody can enter. Silence. His mother didn't rush to fix it. She didn't tell him to be grateful. She didn't give him advice about money. She simply said, "You spent your whole life making sure you'd be okay alone." Another pause. "Maybe now you can learn to be okay with people." He closed his eyes, because that was the sentence he'd been avoiding his entire life. He had solved the problem of survival. He had never learned what came after. The next morning, he did something that felt almost irresponsible. He took 3 weeks off. No business trip, no productivity retreat, no 5-year plan, just 3 weeks. His first instinct was to calculate what the time would cost him. Then he stopped. For 20 years he'd been asking, "What will this cost me?" He decided to ask a different question. "What will I miss if I don't do it?" So he drove home. He ate breakfast with his mother. Not a rushed breakfast, not coffee while checking his phone. He actually sat there. They talked about things that had nothing to do with money. He helped his old neighbor repair a fence. The man offered him $20. He laughed. "Keep it." His neighbor looked at him strangely. "What's gotten into you?" He smiled. "I think I finally have enough." Later that afternoon, Daniel called. His daughter wanted to go to the park. He almost said he was busy. Then he remembered the photograph. So he went. She grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the swings. He hadn't realized how fast children moved, or how much they talked, or how many questions one person could ask in 10 minutes. She asked him what he did for work. "I invest." "What do you invest in?" "Companies." "Are you rich?" He laughed, a little. She thought about it, then pointed toward the ice cream truck. "Can we get one?" He looked at her. "Sure." It cost $4. $4? His investments probably made more than that while they were standing there. But somehow, he couldn't remember the last time $4 had bought him a better afternoon. For the first time, he wasn't collecting assets. He was collecting memories. And strangely, he didn't feel poorer. Then, on the 9th day, his phone rang. It was his mother. She had been having trouble breathing. The doctors wanted to run more tests. Then came the number. The procedure would cost more than most people could save in years. He didn't hesitate. "I'll pay." His mother looked at him. "No, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. I have the money. I know. I can take care of this." She reached for his hand. "I don't need you to be my bank account." He stopped. She squeezed his fingers. "I need my son." That sentence broke something open. Because for years, he had believed providing was the highest form of love. Pay the bill, fix the problem, remove the inconvenience, make sure nobody needs anything. But sitting beside his mother that night, he realized something. Sometimes people don't want your solution. They want your presence. So he stayed. No laptop, no financial news, no market updates, no checking the portfolio. Just 2 chairs beside a hospital window. His mother slept. He watched the city lights move below them. At 2:13 a.m., his phone lit up. Markets were moving. He didn't look. At 3:40, another notification. He ignored it. At 5:08, he finally turned the phone face down. For once, the most important thing happening in his life couldn't be measured on a chart. And sitting there, in the quiet hospital room, he understood the difference between 2 things he'd confused for most of his life: providing for someone and being there for someone. Money could do the first. Only he could do the second. The procedure went well. Weeks later, he returned home. His portfolio was still worth millions. His investments were still working. His old car still sat in the driveway. Nothing about the financial side of his life had changed, but he had. He still saved, still invested, still avoided unnecessary debt, still watched his expenses. He hadn't become careless with money. He had simply stopped worshiping it. He started saying yes. Yes to dinner. Yes to birthdays. Yes to long conversations. Yes when someone asked for help. Not because he suddenly needed everyone, because he finally understood that wealth was never supposed to make people unnecessary. It was supposed to make choices possible. For years, he had believed the goal was to reach a point where he needed nothing from anyone.
Now he understood the better goal: to have enough freedom to choose who matters, enough money to buy back time, enough security to stop living afraid, and enough courage to actually spend that time with people. Because the point of building wealth was never to create a life nobody could disturb. It was to create a life worth being disturbed for. Months later, it was 6:17 a.m. Same kitchen, same coffee, same quiet house. His phone sat beside the mug. Then it rang. He looked at the screen. Daniel. For a moment, he just smiled. He answered, "Morning." Daniel asked if he was free for breakfast. The old version of him would have checked his calendar, checked the market, checked his priorities, calculated the cost. The new version simply looked at his coffee, then said, "Give me 20 minutes." He hung up. The coffee was still untouched. The market would open soon. His portfolio would rise or fall. There would be another opportunity, another correction, another number, another reason to wait. But this time, he left the coffee behind. He grabbed his keys, walked outside, and closed the door. Because $3.4 million had taught him to stop worrying about tomorrow, but it took much longer to learn what to do with today. Financial freedom isn't having a life where nobody can disturb your peace. It's having a life worth being disturbed for.